People who identify as gay in Uganda risk life in prison after Parliament passed a new bill to crack down on homosexual activities. It also includes the death penalty in certain cases. That move has drawn various reactions. White House warned members of Uganda's parliament that sanctions restricting them from doing business with the United States could be on the way for those responsible for the passage of the law. The United Nations has termed it a deeply troubling development. Amnesty International is urging President Yoweri Museveni to reject the bill when it gets to his office. Roland Ebole, who is the Uganda and Tanzania researcher at Amnesty International, is joining us now to talk about this. Roland, welcome to WION World is One. What's your plea to President Museveni? Do you think there's a likelihood of President vetoing the bill?
Thank you very much for having me. It is very difficult to tell whether the president will veto the bill at this moment because the way it was rushed through the motions of passing in parliament shows that there was really political pressure to have the parliament sign the bill into law. And so this means that it has blessings from the executive or the top offices. My thinking right now is that we will do as much as possible to continue putting pressure for him not to sign the bill into law, but it's a wait and see situation at the moment.
What is Amnesty International saying about this bill? What is the reaction from the body?
We find the bill to be utterly discriminatory, considering that one, it punishes people for consensual same-sex conduct activities. It goes ahead and also to criminalize promotion. And for promotion, it really makes vague provisions whereby in future we'll find human rights NGOs, we'll find people who go to express themselves on social media, people who, just have their own legitimate expression being criminalized for speaking on same-sex issues. But again, knowing Uganda for what it is, whereby the civic space has really been shrinking, we find that the government or the state can use this law to actually go after NGOs that it has a problem with. So we really think that the nature of the law, the vague provisions of the law, the nature of sentences that the law prescribes is going to, violate the rights and freedoms of Ugandans and the civic space of actors in Uganda.
Let's talk more about that, Roland. What are the dangers and ramifications of passing this bill, or rather, criminalizing LGBTQ relationships, both for the community and also for our country? One,
as I mentioned, discrimination is that once we criminalize LGBTI activities, one, you find that this community will not be free to go to look for services because already you have already said that we don't identify you, and this includes health services. It includes services such as LGBTI community going to hospitals for treatment, because one, if the treatment is related to, for instance, issues that affect their sexual health, then you find that these persons may face some kind of discrimination. We may find that this community may also face hate and hate-related violence, because one, such laws also gang communities against, members of the public against such communities. We find that this law, as it is, and criminalizing, acts of same-sex conduct, may also create situations whereby there would be violence against such communities, because it is also unsuspect, because even the definition of what same-sex conduct in terms of how they describe homosexuality, issues such as, stating that there will be violations, or they've criminalized what they call HIV-related infections that come from, homosexuality, meaning that, again, communities may be forced into forced HIV testing and all that. So there are a number of issues that are related, not just in terms of discrimination into civic space, shrinking, but also moving more and more into hatred and violence that may be meted against this community. We have seen that before. We have seen that in countries like Tanzania, whereby just a pronouncement by a regional commissioner made communities go after their neighbors, outing them as being homosexuals and really meting violence against them. And this community of people and many were forced to flee the country for their safety.
Ebole, half of the African countries have colonial-era laws that criminalize homosexuality. What could be driving these homophobic sentiments among leaders who often claim that it is an important Western culture?
What you raised is really important, because most of criminalization of what is called homosexual conduct actually come from various penal codes, acts in our countries. For instance, Uganda also has a penal act code which dates back into the 1960s, and in this penal code, acts of engaging in anal sexual conduct, it's prescribed by law. So I believe that in the recent past, this fight has become political, and it has become political in the nature that politicians in the region, in the continent, have mobilized their support against Western countries, or support from Western states who they have tagged have been supporting NGOs in the region, and primarily for regime change causes. You must realize that NGOs in their work, and especially governance and human rights NGOs, to a great extent have been critical of states. And so to mobilize communities and people against these NGOs, then some of the sentiments or rhetoric from the state has been that these NGOs are used to push for an anti-Africa or anti-community or anti-culture agenda, such as LGBTI and homosexual, practice or promotion.
The White House has reacted to this. Let me quote the White House now. They say, "We are certainly watching this really closely, and we would have to take a look at whether or not there might be repercussions that would have to take, perhaps in an economic way, should this law actually get passed and enacted." What will be the repercussions if the United States sanctions Uganda?
We, as Amnesty International, do not go after conditionality, and especially conditionality for development-related, relationships between states, and so we would like not to, say that we really support, certain repercussions, especially if the repercussions would be on conditions on especially aid, because aid really, affects, the most needy persons within the society. However, we would really want states, and especially states that have got an influence or can put pressure on the president of Uganda, President Yoweri Museveni, to really push and advocate that he does not sign this law, this bill into law. You remember, this is the third time that in a period of about 10 years that Uganda has tried to recriminalize LGBTI. And so we know that there is a lot of pressure within the political space. However, we know that we can get advocacy and efforts to really have this, vetoed.
Ebole, finally, same-sex relations are banned in about 30 African countries where many people uphold conservative religious and social values. Critics are skeptical about the church being involved. They claim the Bible teaches love, But what the clergy is doing is spreading hate. How do you react to that statement?
That's a really interesting statement because, again, Africa, and especially we have so many religions, and increasingly we are finding a situation whereby many people are also, do not conform to any religion. But again, we have seen a situation in countries in the region, including Kenya, whereby the state has really become, has merged up so much with religion, the church to be specific, and we are seeing that the executive is really maybe taking a cue over what to do in terms of morality from the church, something that is, it's really worrying, whereby we find the church really imposing, certain values on society that may not be completely or 100% Christian or as in another religion. So at this point, I would say that we are seeing a lot of religion really taking over, something that many countries in the region must really watch and really try and make a balance. But again, just to note that this really depends with or on the leadership of a nation at a particular time. You remember that in Tanzania, in the last administration of President John Pombe Magufuli, these issues were really taken seriously, and government leaders would go speak against them. But now we find that with President Suluhu, we have a little bit of more space for association. So I think it depends with leaders, and we must really continue advocating that we don't have such kind of a repression against this community of people, whether it comes from the state, religious community, or members of the public.
Roland Ebole, Uganda and Tanzania researcher at Amnesty International, thank you very much for your time and for talking to us on WION World is One.
Thank you very much for having me.